Mindy, and I'm a total Trekkie. I think that right now, more than ever, everyone should be Trekkies.
Oh, okay. Can I ask an annoying? First of all, I love that I feel like you've teed up this question. You think everyone should be Trekkies right now? Are you a Trekkie or a Trekker? And do you feel like there is a difference?
I don't. So here's where I guess I'm not as good of a Trekker because I didn't know there was a difference.
Wait, you didn't know until right now, or?
Yes.
What? Are you kidding? I feel like Trekkie was like this thing that the Trekker community said no.
Oh, I always think Trekkie. So I guess I'm a Trekkie.
Yeah, I feel like you're using the politically incorrect term for your.
As I should as a good Trekkie.
Okay, so my first question is, well, I'll just lead off your intro, which said that you think right now everybody should be a Trekkie. Why? Why now?
Now I have to put my caveat on this. I am a mostly Next Generation and the knockoffs from that Trek person.
So what do you count?
Like
that counts.
What?
Okay, so basically the Next Generation and everything after that, but not the original series?
No, I do like the original. I don't like anything after Voyager.
Well, what comes after? Tell me what comes after Voyager.
Oh, no, I saw Enterprise. I do like Enterprise.
Well, then maybe you like all of it. Oh, wait, maybe you don't like all of it.
The new ones, Discovery and Picard, I have not watched them. So
you haven't watched them at all?
No, because we don't have cable or internet. I mean, sorry, we have internet only. So we watch stuff on Netflix and stuff like that. And we'd have to get CBS All Access, and we're not going to bother.
So you like Star Trek, but you don't like Star Trek so much that you want to pour money into getting it.
Well, no, it's not even that. I feel like I'm getting off of your question now, but I've been kind of watching other Trekkies talk about the new ones, and I feel like it's gone. So here's why I think I'll go back to this. Here's why I think everyone should be like a Next Generation Trekkie person right now, because the thing that I feel like Gene Roddenberry did is give us hope for the future. The Federation was thought of all things. It was a very organized system. People were pretty much happy, and everyone was considered. And then they go to these other places and they see some weird, horrible, violent things going on other planets, and they're like, well, this is the way that we did it, and let's see if we can help you get there. And everyone accepts each other, and this is just not happening anymore. And I feel like the new ones are getting more to the it's all about me. It's all about me. And I don't feel like the Next Generation was like, it's all about us. I felt like it was very open to everyone.
So you mentioned Gene Roddenberry, who is like the original creator of the original series, and did have an impact on the Next Generation, although there are other creators who worked on it.
Absolutely. Right. But I feel like, because he did help out at least in the beginning of Next Generation. He was still alive when that started, so I think he was consulting on it.
Now it's interesting because I think in the past couple of years I went back to the original series, and you're right. So the Federation, the sort of giant governmental group that sends the Starship Enterprise out to the stars to explore. The idea is all of humanity is kind of working together, and even with some races like the Vulcans, we're working together with them too. And there's conflicts with other races, but not with the people. And I felt like in the Next Generation, there was already more conflict between the characters on the ship than there was on the original show. But I don't know, maybe you disagree. Do you think the Next Generation was still very optimistic and?
Yes. Yeah, I felt like it was just a more open world trying to come together as I do feel like the idea of being global and not being territorial is important. And I feel like the world is only becoming more territorial and not becoming global. But the United Federation was all these planets, forget all the countries on the planet, but the whole planet, they're all getting together. But yeah, I do feel like on the original series, so how I first started watching it is I watched the reruns when I was a kid. I'd come home from school and watch the reruns. And sometimes, in some ways, it would annoy me because Captain Kirk was always just kissing the girls, and there were fights and things. So it was the very typical that kind of thing. But when I rewatch it now, he's crazy good. I mean, he's got a presence about him that it's. I feel like the Next Generation took it further to being more of a peaceful society, but it was there in the beginning too. It was, you know.
Yeah, because I feel like Kirk in that original series, he does so he's sexy and romantic, and he likes the ladies, human and alien, and he's also aggressive. And I feel like they captured that a bit in the new J.J. Abrams movies, where Kirk is like the renegade who's a little too testosterone fueled, a little too confident of himself, and he needs these other people around him, like the Vulcan, the even-tempered Vulcan Spock, and maybe the more human, more practical Bones to like pull him back or keep him calibrated.
Right, and you're right. I didn't even bring in the movie universe. I do
Did
like
you like
the
those?
nuances. I did like them, but I do feel like, again, they're just trying to be like, I feel like in general, movies anymore just try to be like boom bam everywhere instead of story. And I feel like that was what was so excellent about Next Generation, and I liked Voyager, and I liked Voyager and Next Generation and Deep Space Nine, because I felt like there were stories that mattered, and there's moments I would get emotional, you know. So I don't feel that in a lot of the entertainment today.
So, I mean, so right now, I guess we could say, hey, we're in the middle of this pandemic where most people are staying at home in some way, and people are talking about the fact that they're either binging on reading, or most people don't have the patience, even or the attention span for reading, myself included often, and we just sit and watch TV or sit and watch movies. We're basically binge watching stuff.
Yes.
There's so much stuff to watch, but you and your husband too, you rewatch Star Trek. What is it about Star Trek you think that I know you? So you've mentioned one thing, which is like you love the fact that it's global and not tribal, and that it has this optimistic view that people can get along and it's organized. What else do you think so appeals that you like watching it so much?
I do think that I go back to Roddenberry, I guess, because I feel like I've heard that like he'll talk about societal problems. So the a lot of the I think about Next Generation, the outlier was Data. He's a machine. He's not sentient. Well, maybe he is. I mean, they have episodes about exploring that. I mean, yes,
he's an android. He looks like a person, but
he looks like a person, but you know, but then they're like, well, we can just make the robots do whatever we want. We want them to go over here. They have to go over there. And Picard fights back. He's like, no, he has feelings. He is himself. He should be able to do what he wants. You know, so they actually have some great episodes about looking into what makes like the line between automation and people, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. Do you?
And then the next level, which I really love Voyager, and now I have to admit, one of our dogs is named Janeway after Captain Janeway. Haha.
Okay, and the Voyager is, so you have the original series where the Enterprise goes out and explores, the second series where the new Enterprise go out and explores, then the third series, Deep Space Nine, they're parked on a station, and then this show, Voyager, tell me what the setup is for Voyager.
So that is, they go out and they get caught in, I can't even think of the word right now, which is horrible, but they get thrown from the Alpha Quadrant. We're all in the Alpha Quadrant right now. Brendan, you're in the Alpha Quadrant.
You mean like really, like they actually, you're saying the astrophysicists call this the Alpha Quadrant?
Oh, no, the Star Trek astrophysicists call it.
Okay, got you. Okay, yeah. I'm in the Alpha Quadrant. Okay.
And I'm bringing you to Star Trek.
Okay.
It throws them into the Delta Quadrant, and which is just, I mean, it would take them, they get immediately sent there, and it would take them thousands, like how many years? 100 years? I feel like I don't want to tell people wrong. I bet many, many, many years, possibly generations, to get back to Earth.
And they would have to be at full speed warp, and they they would just have to go nonstop. It would take them forever. Right,
not run into anything. Well, but they have to run into things because they need to find food and energy. Right. But but anyway, it would take them forever to get back home. But they plot a course home, and the whole series is them plotting a course home and trying to find shortcuts to get there. And they're having to interact with all kinds of different species because no one's ever seen them. No one's been in the Delta Quadrant. Well, some people have, but that we meet along the way. But
So they do stumble into some people who wound up in the Delta Quadrant from
yes,
the Alpha Quadrant.
Yeah. Okay. Once in a while, yeah. Yeah.
What are the Amelia Earhart?
Yes, yeah. Some aliens. Some aliens abducted her and some other people, and they find him in the Delta Quadrant and they wake him up.
Holy crap! I feel like I need to. I don't think I ever got all the way through Voyager. What are social? So one social issue you mentioned is like in the Next Generation, they kind of look at sentience or what makes you human. Are there other social issues, things that make the show to you feel particularly relevant, especially Voyager? You mentioned that you liked Voyager.
Yes.
What kind of stuff do they deal with?
The thing that my husband and I love about our favorite character on that is the Doctor, who is a hologram.
Okay.
So that's another level beyond automation is a hologram sentient. You know, you're just supposed to live on the hologram.
Okay, is it that place they go in the door and like the walls look like a grid? So the holodeck. Yes,
the holodeck. Thank you. Sorry, I apologize because my brain, it's too much in Star Trek. I can't remember what. Yes. So, you know, they're designed by people write programs for the holodeck, and you can go in, you can hang out with Shakespeare or Leonardo da Vinci, that kind of thing, anyone you want to hang out with. And anyway, so what they do is the Doctor, they did have a Doctor on Voyager, but he got killed on the way to the Delta Quadrant. So they have to make the holographic Doctor become the Doctor. And he starts deciding, I want to do this. And he's a very creative individual. You know, he can do all his Doctor stuff, but he loves to sing. You find out all these things about him, and they actually end up having another thing, just like they did with Data in Next Generation, where at what point are holograms sentient? Can you tell them to go do everything? Because, you know, what they end up doing in the future is all the jobs no one wants to do, who's going to do them? They have a lot of holograms do them, and or robots like Data. And and you think about, there's all these doctors out there that are really just curious and they want to expand their minds, and they're forced to dig in the mines for their whole lives. You know, that's it. So it's again exploring being human and giving humanity to things you would never think of. Well, you would, but even more than you thought.
Well, that's interesting. So on Next Generation, do you have a favorite character on Next Generation?
Yeah, who is my favorite on Next? I don't. Probably Data would be, but he can kind of annoy me sometimes too. I do like LaForge. I do like Geordi LaForge a lot too.
And he plays the chief engineer, and
yes.
He's got the cool visor.
Yes, because he can't actually see. Yeah, his eyes, he has to wear that visor because that's the only way he can see. But because of that visor, he can see the world differently than we do. He can perceive things we can't.
Why do you think, so of all the many, there are all kinds of themes that run through all the episodes. Why do you think the story of Data, about the line between machine and man, and the story of the hologram Doctor in Voyager, the line between hologram and man, why do you think that? Why do you like that so much? Are you super into AI or anything?
I'm afraid of AI. I'm afraid of what will happen. Like when I watch AI shows. So I think what it is I'm very attached to pets, and I give a lot of anthropomorphosis to them. So I think I'm always thinking, what are they thinking? And we don't quite know. And so I transfer that over onto robots or onto holograms. And I think everyone needs to have the right to say what they want to do. So like I watch some sci-fi stuff where they have AI and the robots are treated badly, and I can't watch it and I start crying because I'm like, don't be mean to the robot, don't hurt the robot, you know?
So you would have trouble. I mean, Blade Runner deals with that, where it's about exactly what you've said. It's about smart robots sent to do garbage, painful work out in places, or Westworld, where robots are used as playthings for people.
Yeah. And honestly, that Lost in Space, the new Lost in Space, I love it. But it kills me because there's this robot that, everyone else around, all the other robots are killing. I'm getting off of Star, but all the other robots just killed humans, and then this guy is like, no, I made a bond with the boy, and so he starts becoming like, he's changing. Like, everyone can change. Maybe that's what it is. Everyone can change. And then other people just won't allow them to, and they will treat them badly because, oh, you're a robot, I can do whatever I want to.
And also, it sounds like you feel strongly. I'd be curious about, maybe we could just ask about your pets too, about the autonomy that you think. What autonomy is due a pet? What autonomy is due a robot? If you made something or you're in charge of it, it doesn't have your capacity, what is it allowed to choose for itself is the question.
That's a really hard question.
It is a hard question. I mean, so with your dogs, do you think are there ways in which, like, maybe other people wouldn't allow the dog to make an autonomous choice about, well, if the dog doesn't want to do this, then the dog doesn't have to do this? Or
more than anything, I feel like in general, if people have pets, they're good to them. In general, I can't say that about everyone. But for like when you see animal abuse, it's the same thing for me for animal abuse. I can't watch movies when animals are hurt. I can't watch it. And I've graduated that to AI and to, I guess, holograms, It's something, I think it's because we have we brought the pet into our world, so anything that happens to them, it's our fault.
That I totally see the connection with that, again, with those AI and robots. I mean, you made the thing, and so now you're responsible for it.
Yeah, we brought them into this world. Let's make sure they have a good life.
In the themes, Star Trek sometimes deals with, it's more about adults and less about adults and kids. Although one of the most interesting things in The Next Generation, people hated it, was the teenager Wesley Crusher, who is the ensign. But lots of people hated his character because he was a know-it-all preteen teen, and that's the character they gave him.
Yes.
And so there were kid-adult conflicts. Before that, there were almost no kids on Star Trek. So they did deal with families more in The Next Generation, whereas they only dealt with adult families in the original series.
Yeah.
Do you relate this same pets and robots? Is that what parents do when a parent makes a kid? Is it a similar thing? I mean, do you have the same qualms about, like, if you had to watch something where people are abusing kids or stuff like that? This
is my horrible admission. Babies and small kids, absolutely. Once you have a little bit of knowing what is going on in the world, I'm more forgiving. I'm not forgiving of it, but if you show someone getting hurt, especially an adult, I'm like, it's horrible, but I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry about it. I'm listening to myself and I sound horrible.
No, you don't. You're just saying. I mean, you're saying normally when you grow up, you have responsibility for your actions, and if something bad happens to you because of what you did, then...
and sometimes it's not even what you did. It's just there's horrible things happening in the world and you got caught in it. I do feel, that's what it is. It's when the world is just wrecked against you and there's nothing you can do, that's when my heart comes out.
How does it feel? So having watched, how many times have you watched the original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager? We didn't even talk about Enterprise or the movies.
Right.
Is there, like you mentioned, Next Generation, how many times do you think you've seen those movies or those series?
I think we've probably watched Next Generation the most, probably like, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. Like, we don't watch it all at once. We don't binge watch those necessarily. But just when we went, my husband and I will just want the feeling of Star Trek. We're like, we need something positive because I feel like it's a positive thing. And so we watched that one the most. We watched Voyager a lot too. So we probably watched Voyager 4 or 5 times too. Original series, I haven't watched as much. Deep Space Nine is really good too. I don't know why. I just haven't watched that one as much. And Enterprise, is awesome too. It really is.
Do you struggle? One reason I struggle with Deep Space Nine, you say you're watching for some positivity. Deep Space Nine is a little rough because the most of it is about a war. It's about a war that was happening and then a war that keeps sparking up constantly.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. It's the most strife-filled Star Trek, I think. Until I get the feel, this is why I haven't seen the new ones. I get the feeling that they're all strife-filled. It's all about much less about we as a unity and more us as individuals. I can't say that, so I shouldn't say it's bad. But it feels like it's not the feeling that Gene Roddenberry put together, It's more like, oh, we have to have the adversity. We have to have people against people. And I feel like that was what Star Trek was trying not to do, is to be like, we're all in it together. Let's get along. Let's do it the best we can. But I forgot your question.
Oh, no. I want to ask a follow-up question, about Deep Space Nine, like, that one stuff with war.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
It was strife-filled. What is it about the difference between a show, because I know exactly what you're talking about, The Next Generation, where the overall theme is, even though there is conflict, people are working together toward a common goal. Yes. And I think now, I don't know if you had even thought of that. In a lot of sci-fi today, there is a tendency to humanize evil. So not only do you have good and evil, and they're both kind of presented as, well, they both have a reason to do what they do, then everyone kind of has their own individual motives, and then it really doesn't feel like everyone sort of pulling together on a cause. But I don't know, maybe you could put it in your own words. What to you, when you say people aren't acting together and they're acting for themselves, what does that mean when you're watching a movie or a show? What turns you off?
Gosh, I guess I have to think about what I think. It's what you're saying, that so I can't really, it's just like, whatever I think is more important than what you think. I feel like a lot of people get that way, or you don't understand me. You don't understand me. You have to understand the world I'm coming from. Everyone has an individual world they come from, and we all have to just come together and not be so, but you didn't think about me. No, I was thinking about a greater good,
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. Now, if you take that mentality and you put it in kind of what you're seeing in the news, or how you feel what's happening in the past few years, do you feel that's absolutely that people are just thinking about themselves? Because I feel like some people argue that, I feel like everyone thinks they're acting for everyone feels like they're acting for the common good, unless they're very clear about their own selfish intentions. Right. They always think what they're doing is acting for the common good. But someone outside can look in and say, I could compare you two and say you're acting for the common good and you're not, even though you both say you are. I don't know. When you see this play out in the world, maybe it's, how do you parse that out? I mean, do you think?
It's that's the hard thing, is I do feel like that's why I love Star Trek so much, is I felt like they got past that, which I don't think is possible. And honestly, one of the things, so my husband's an economist. One of the things in Star Trek that makes the least sense is there's no economy. I mean, you don't get paid to do anything anymore. It doesn't make any sense. Like, some people have to have jobs they don't want. So that's when you get to the robots and the holograms. Someone has to do the jobs no one wants. And everyone should just be able to be happy and do what they do and just keep going. I would love to get to that point. I don't think we ever can, sadly.
So with that, I feel like I know exactly what you're saying. So the idea of the United Federation of Planets and of Earth is that these are planets where people have gotten, they're post-economy. They don't do things for the money. They do things for the common good. They do things for their own personal expression, but they don't do things to put food on the table anymore. Right.
And then the ones that do are other races, like the Ferengi. Oh, all they want to do is get money. So you just overemphasize the need that Ferengis want. It's all about getting more gold,
Yeah, and then they're totally a stereotype.
Fun of laugh at them. So in that way, again, we're dividing ourselves from the Ferengi, so we're guilty of it too, we can Star Trek makes me feel hopeful, and then I see what's happening in the world, and I feel less and less hopeful.
Well, so you think about the fact there's no economy, and you're like, this could never happen. This could never happen. So for you, like, Star Trek is like this. It's a utopia. It's a perfect place that cannot exist.
Yeah. I mean, and I can't. Can I say it's an absolute utopia? No, because of course there's bad things even in the idea of Gene Roddenberry's ideal world. But yeah, I don't know. Can we ever get to utopia?
Well, what are the big? Well, I'm not the person on trial here. You're the person on trial here.
Okay.
You started this off with the best phrase, which was you watch Star Trek and you think everybody should be a Trekkie. Can I ask you, if Star Trek is a utopia that cannot happen, what do you hope? Like, what do you hope would actually come out of the ideas of Star Trek that you wish people today would just start changing their lives in this small way? Yeah. That involves, what could they do?
I think, man, if you watch Star Trek and really listen to what they're talking about, it'll make you think about things in a way that you hadn't, so it's just another place where people can say, here's my life. This is the way I've lived my life. Now I see this other way what someone else is doing something. Instead of just saying bad, my way is better. It's like, well, let's see. Let's look and see what's going on. Is there anything we can do from that? Let's band together and put our resources together. It's just to give a different outlook on the world. That's what space exploration is seeing what else is out there.
So that makes me think of a major thing. I was going to accuse you of being a pro-colonizer, but then because you were talking about what the Federation of Planets does is it goes out and but even in the very first original series, that could have been colonization. Earth has its shit together, and they send ships out to share knowledge and learn things and bring the culture of the United Federation of Planets. Can we help you in any way? Basically, in a way, gentle cultural colonization. But there's one thing we haven't talked about yet, and it was huge in the original series, and then it got even bigger in the Next Generation because Picard was obsessed with it, was the Prime Directive.
Oh, yeah.
You are not allowed. So describe to me your understanding of what the Prime Directive is.
Well, I think they took this from the Vulcans. I don't know the idea of space exploration, because Vulcans didn't bother to come. They've been there, but they didn't bother to come down and talk to us until they saw that we were ready to look at their point of view. Okay, welcome to this world where you're going to be able to see past your stereotypes and things and be able to be completely open-minded.
So they had to wait for Earth's humanity to reach.
Yeah. So basically, it's like So sorry. What is the Prime Directive? It's don't take any steps that would influence what would change the history for people. Don't give them technology they're not ready for yet. Don't help destroy other enemies because we think, you're right, let's go help destroy your enemies. No, let what was supposed to happen in the world happen. Let's make sure our things don't change. Kind of like if you think about people when they say go back and travel to the past, don't touch anything, don't change anything, or you're going to change the future.
Right.
It's kind of like let what was supposed to happen. And but when they're ready for it, then help them out.
So I'm of two minds on that. So
okay.
So one thing is, think about, obviously, whenever the Prime Directive gets discussed in an episode, it's almost always because someone is going to violate it. Yeah. Because out of compassion or out of rational, like, we're thinking this through and we're like, this can't end well. So we need to somehow interfere into this conflict or this weird thing. Otherwise, this will be terrible. But the other side is how judgy, like the Vulcans. Again, side of the aliens in space, it's so judgy. Like, well, when you're ready to come play with us and be mature beings in the universe, then we'll take you into our group. But until then, we're just going to leave your planet alone, and you're just going to have to fight your wars.
You can kind of see that. I mean, the humans like the Vulcans, but there's never a complete camaraderie with them because they just think they're so stoic and unfeeling.
Right.
And the Vulcans have basically turned off emotions, what makes them even human. So it's hard to deal with that. But shoot.
But just about the judginess. Like the Prime Directive, it feels good, and you're not trying to shove yourself into another planet's dealings, but then at the other time, you're not helping when you could. Aren't we all supposed to help?
It's a very hard thing, and I do feel like Voyager gets into that more, just because really the primary thing they want to do is get home. So sometimes they do make decisions. Can I think of a specific example right now? No, but they might make decisions that changes some environment a little bit just so they can get home sooner. But they really think about it because it's like, this is just us. We can't change the world because we want to get home. It's a really hard thing because sometimes you absolutely have medical treatments that could treat people and get them well, but if it would change their knowledge of science, they're not going to do it. They're not ready for it yet. It's a really, really hard thing.
It is. I mean, I'm thinking about it, and it's basically, from the original series, that is a massive. Sometimes they try to do that, so the crew of the Enterprise tries to do the right thing on a planet, and it backfires because they didn't understand what was happening, or the people, again, they're not ready for it. The people, they seem like us, they're smart like us, but somehow they just won't stop fighting, or they won't recognize they're all the same, or they won't recognize this is an outdated belief system they need to let go of.
Oh. Yeah. It really makes me think about the very first episode of The Next Generation, which is when Q comes and finds them and starts judging. I feel like all of Next Generation was really just Q's judgment on humanity, because they're trying to show we're not horrible people. We have moved beyond this, because he gives them example. Q is a superhuman. I don't even know what Q was. Do you know Q?
No, actually, I was going to ask you because I don't remember if it was ever like, is he a god? Is he an extra dimensional being?
I wonder if it's just a being on another level, But they're able to move things through space and time. I mean, they break traditional physics and such.
And he's also a total dick, so that adds to the problem. He's not like the Vulcans who are emotionless and rational. He's also wants to win, and he wants to prove he's right. I mean,
he's the one that introduces them to the Borg.
Right. One of the most terrible villains. Yes.
But really, the whole episode was their very first couple episodes was they were going to go off on their first mission to go look at a colony and look at how things had been progressing and judge whether they wanted to do something with these guys. And he was like, watch what's going to happen. What are you guys going to do? And it's always a big question. It's like, what's going on? Basically, the people on this planet had taken a creature, really big space creature that is able to, with its mind, make whatever you want be. And so they torture it, and they're like, they hurt him if he doesn't give them what they want. So it looks like they have a perfect community with all this great commerce and beautiful surroundings, and it's just because that is what the alien has created for them.
But do they have to torture it? They have to torture it to get it to give them
because
what they
wants to do what it wants to do, and when it wants to, it's like the creature. I mean, creature is good or bad. I think it's probably good, and it's just trapped, and it just really wants to get out, but they don't want it to. They don't want it to go away because then their world would disappear. So yes, they torture it, and they hurt it when it does something that they don't want it to do. And so then Voyager discovers something's up, and they figure it out, and they help it be so that a creature is released, And they decide not to work with that group of people because they're like, no, you're not going to join the Federation. You are torturing this creature.
There's a short story, and I can't remember who wrote it. I think it's by a female author in the past 30 years. But it's about this town that's perfect, where there's no problems. But there's that one kid who's locked away somewhere, and the only way we can all be happy and have everything be fine is this one kid needs to lead a miserable existence.
Wow.
And so
that's it. That's it. And it's a beautiful moment, because at the end of that episode, the alien is released up. It kind of looks like a huge jellyfish. It just comes up out of the earth, and then its mate comes and finds it, and they get to be back together. It's been apart from its mate its whole life for as long as he had been having to deal with those people. Judgment at Farpoint. I think that's the name of it, the episode.
And this is a Voyager episode?
It's the very first one. And it's two-parter. The very first. No, I'm sorry, not Voyager. Next
Generation.
Yeah.
Is it Encounter at Farpoint?
Yes, it is Encounter at Farpoint. Thank you.
No, that's a famous. Because now I'm like Judgment at Farpoint. Ooh, there's like.
Sorry.
Wait, there's a Farpoint.
There is a trial. Q acts as a judge, but
yes.
You're right. It is. You're right. Encounter. Yep. See, you could look at you being a good Trekkie.
I have spent many years working hard to remember stupid things that nobody else needs to remember, just to be able to deploy them at such times as this. Yes, the utility in life. How do you, through the years, so you started watching as a kid, so we're talking about like late afternoon, you would come from school and watch a rerun of The Next Generation? Or okay.
Yep.
So did you start watching when Next Generation was already off, or was it still being shown, but it was also in syndication?
I was a kid. I can't remember what year it started. I should know, right? But I think I was in junior high when it started.
Okay.
And I remember being excited because the reason I love Star Trek is my dad loved it, and our whole family was me and my dad and my sister were really excited to see this new Star Trek. And we're like, what are they going to do? How is it going to be? And we were all just so excited about it. But I was in junior high then. So it really is the Star Trek I mostly grew up with. I would just watch the original series a bit on the side. But I would get annoyed because the girls had to wear short dresses and the guys would get in fist fights. That's ridiculous.
Yes, the one in the late 60s, early.
Yes.
I feel like late 60s, early 70s. It's so funny. You had the dad experience I had, which was the same thing. I didn't know anything about Star Trek, but then I remember when Star Trek was going to come on, apparently that was a thing for my dad. And I'm like, okay, we're going to watch Star Trek. And then he would tell me later on that when he was younger, Star Trek was this magical show that dealt with racism and in some ways sexism, but dealt with like a better world. It was kind of utopian. It had kind of hippie ideals in it. And he really loved it. And then the fact there was going to be this new Star Trek was, this bonding experience between me and my dad.
Yes. Yeah. Yep.
How much do you think, if your dad didn't care and this wasn't a big family thing, do you think you'd be into Star Trek today?
I think so. Can I really know that? I don't know. My dad was always into sci-fi. So we would watch, we watched the original Battlestar Galactica. We watched all of that. So how much of that is because my dad was watching it and I watched it with him? I don't know if I can really say. I would think just because of my attraction to sci-fi worlds, no matter what, I would have found it interesting.
Is there any other TV show? Yeah. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no. Even if he hadn't been, I think I would have found it interesting.
Did you introduce the show to your husband, or you guys both already watched the show?
No, he knew it. My husband is from Spain, so he grew up in a different country, but they had all of our TV shows. They would eventually get there. So he did see Star Trek Next Generation, and yes, he loves it too, but I don't know. I think we just started really watching, because we started really watching the Next Generation together. It was one of our bonding things.
Was it like after you were married or while you were dating?
I'm trying to remember. I'm sure it was both. I think it had to be when we were dating. We dated about, a couple years before we got married. So, and it was on at that time. So yeah. It wasn't like a regular thing. Like our date night was never, hey, let's go watch Star Trek together.
Right.
But once we're living in the same house and the TV's on, we'll gravitate towards Star Trek or something.
How do you watch it? Are you watching on Netflix or somewhere else?
Netflix, yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, we don't have cable or anything, which is why we don't have cable or satellite. So, see, my Jane. Oh, our dog is named Janeway. Have I already said that? She's barking.
You did. So Captain Janeway from Voyager.
Yes.
Is this your first animal you named after a Star Trek character?
Yeah. Our other dog we have right now is named Oliver. He's named. I don't need to get into that, but basically it's little orphan Oliver. You'd bring him into your house. Yeah.
So like Oliver Twist kind of thing?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, very nice. Who, through the years, have you had experiences beyond? So your dad and maybe your family watched Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then you kind of struck up this love for Star Trek: The Next Generation with your husband. Have there been other people that you've watched Star Trek with through the years, or not?
Not really. I think it has always been an individual thing, really. Just on my own, or if my husband's here, we both watch it together. I tend to be like that anyway. I tend to just do things on my own.
How come you haven't gotten into? So how come you don't watch the movies all the time? How come you don't read the comic books? How come you don't read the novels? How come you don't cosplay as the red shirt who's going to die? I mean, how come you haven't really gotten into Trek?
One time I did go to, I used to live in Lubbock, Texas, and I went to a Comic-Con there. And I did go to some of the Star Trek stuff there. I know there was because I think a lot of them have their own spaceship together. They all come together in our spaceship people, and they become. Sorry, people that do this. I'm not very well informed on this.
Oh, you mean
but,
like
they come
so
together
there are
and
people...
they have roles and they do different things.
You.
I never got into that. No, I don't know why. Yeah, and I never did the comic book stuff much. Are there Star Trek comic books?
There's Star Trek comic books, but there are a lot of Star Trek books. At least there have been periods with a lot of Star Trek novels, but just never felt like it. There's just never.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I never have read that. So the other side of this is Star Wars, right? And my sister would read a lot of the Star Wars books. Yes, Star Wars, because there are a lot of Star Wars books that were taking the story to another. So she read a lot of that, and I would read a little bit, but usually I wouldn't be that impressed with it.
If someone gave you the chance, I don't think I've ever asked anyone else a question like this on this podcast so far, but now I want to because we're talking about fantasy and sci-fi and speculative fiction worlds, and I love all those things. If you had a chance, if someone said you can go be on the crew in a role in any of these shows, so anywhere from like Enterprise is one of the later shows, but it's before the original series, so early stuff, Enterprise all the way to the latest stuff happening now with like Picard and Discovery on CBS All Access, what work would you want to do and what ship would you want to be on? Who?
I probably would want to be a science officer, and I probably would. I think I would want to either be on the Enterprise or on Voyager. I think it's interesting to be stuck in a place that you don't know, and you have to get along with all the people on the ship because you're not going anywhere. So
Voyager's scary though. Like, not that the other ones aren't scary. I mean, the Next Generation have to deal with the Borg, and so there's all kinds of terrible things. But Voyager they're lost in space. Would you be willing to be lost in space?
Because they meet interesting people too. If I really think about it, would I actually like to? No, probably not. But the idea of it, I think I would be okay. I mean, and they even have kids on the ship. There's a baby born and several babies, at least one baby born, and they just grow up in that world, and it's what you do. But luckily, the people you're surrounded by are pretty good people. They know how to deal with the world.
So people have talked about. Oh, sorry.
Voyager, do you like Voyager? The other thing is there was this offset of Federation called the Maquis. That's like the Federation is wrong, and so actually what Voyager in the original series first episode was after that ship to go because one of their people was on board the ship as a secret agent, and then they go to find the Maquis ship, and both the Maquis ship and Voyager get all the way sent to Delta Quadrant, so they have to survive together, so they combine together. So it's not even just everyone on the ship. All of a sudden, all these Maquis people that get into the crew, and you already don't trust each other. You have to trust each other to be okay on the ship, and then you have to explore this world you've never seen before.
And they're specifically anti-Federation.
They just don't quite agree with what the Federation has done. They don't want to be told what to do. They're not bad people. It's just like the absolutism of the Federation. This is the way it is. There's always going to be some people that are like, no, it could be this way.
Yeah.
But they end up getting along very well. And like the chief engineer ends up being the Maquis chief engineer, So, they get good. They get fully integrated into the crew.
Is that conflict run through the entire series, or it kind of gets shaken out in the beginning and then they kind of work together?
Probably 2 or 3 years into it. There's nothing. I would think there's almost nothing left.
If someone had,
they've been together so long, and they've accepted each other. They've accepted each other, and they're not like, you're just wrong. You have to do this. I mean, there's never, there's not that absolutism about it. And so the Voyager crew has to be a little bit more. Yes, you still have to obey the Prime Directive, but sometimes you have to do things a little different than the Federation might have wanted you to do it, because you have to get along in the world. And no one's looking at them and saying, no, you did that wrong, because
they don't have any oversight.
Yeah.
If somebody had never watched Star Trek and they're like, people talk about Star Trek, or somebody's like, I'm into Star Wars, maybe what would you recommend? Some people, I know, having rewatched a little bit the first couple seasons of Star Trek: The Next Generation, it had some people talk about those first couple seasons are a little stilted. It hasn't found its. What would you recommend if somebody's like, I haven't watched Star Trek before? What would you tell them? You need to start with this series, and either from the beginning or what would you tell somebody?
I guess I'm kind of a purist. I'm like, start from the first episode. But I agree that. So I think maybe Next Generation is the best place to try it in. Start there. And the first couple seasons are a little bit. They're still finding their groove, and there's more personality as it goes along. But you've got to see the people develop too. It's fun because you see people change. That's the fun of it all. So I guess I would say start watching Next Generation.
And only go back to the original series later. I mean, original series feels a little dated.
Original series it's good. It's funny because I am quick to say, oh, it's just all about masculinism. Kirk really was. He had gravitas to him, more than I realized.
Like, do you mean the character, or you mean you appreciate William Shatner?
No, the character.
The character.
Yeah, I'm like, oh, he's not just a guy that thinks he's everything. He really does care. I think when I think back when I would watch it when I was a kid, I would think, it's kind of like old, because they love to go back to this too. It's kind of like the old Wild West of when a man was a man, and I hate that kind of thing. I hate that. So it's not all that. It is absolutely getting along with people, even back then, and I don't know. The original, there's something to it. I mean, that was where it started. So.
What do people think? So when I found out you like Star Trek, we worked together for a long while. I thought it was awesome because I like sci-fi. What do other people think in general? Who do you tell that you like Star Trek? How often does it come up? And what do people think when they find out how much Star Trek you watch?
I'm not. It's funny. Recently we had this thing where we had to admit our guilty pleasure on TV.
Yeah.
And I would never say Star Trek because I am not guilty about it. I am. It's like I love it. I'm very willing. Obviously we named our dog Janeway. A lot of people don't get that but I'm upfront about it, but I try not to be too much in people's face about it. But yeah, I have a live long and prosper sign on the back of my phone. So I like just having it's there if you notice it. Is that kind of what you mean?
Well, I was just curious because I know sometimes, well, let's say back in the day, I mean, I don't think my dad ever cared, but Trekkies, when Star Trek was on for only a few seasons, but then it had this cult following, Trekkies were things like Dungeons and Dragons and comic books and Star Trek. These were nerdy things that you got judged for.
Yes. Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like you felt a lot of
I think you and I grew up in the age where that was starting to become the cool thing.
Yes, we did.
There is no guilt now, and I wish I never did Dungeons and Dragons. I wish I would have. And now it's, if you say that, people are like, oh, that's cool,
Yes.
I don't know. It's weird.
Well, okay, now I feel like me and everybody else needs to go back and start with Encounter at Farpoint, which I completely forgot introduces Q from the very beginning, who is a repeating character.
Yes.
Okay, we're all going to watch Star Trek The Next Generation.
Occasional repeating, and he does show up. I can't remember if he's in Deep Space Nine. How awful, I can't remember that, but he's definitely in Voyager too.
Oh, he is in Voyager. Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. I'm going to check it out.
Yep. So really, I have to say, I do love Voyager the absolute most. But I feel like to get the real heart and soul of, I feel like Star Trek Next Generation is the setup for the rest of it.
Yeah, it is the modern revisioning, and they've kept following that all the way through.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks. This was really interesting. Thank you for making the time.
Well, thank you.
This was Mindy. And she likes Star Trek, and she thinks the world would be a better place if some of y'all like Star Trek a little more too.